like to introduce Tracy. Tracy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Tracy. I have two children. My older one is P6 this year. He just took his PSLE and yesterday was his last paper. The other child is a girl. She's P4. She doesn't have ADHD. My son was actually diagnosed at the end of P1, but he was actually already showing signs when he was around kindergarten, when he was walking around the class, when the teachers were teaching. But he was only subsequently diagnosed when he was older, at the end of P1, whereby the teachers could really, fill up the assessment form and fill in the assessment form. And it has been really quite a journey since then. We went through the government route. He was, diagnosed by REACH, and then so he was also given some occupational therapy along the way, and he's also on medication. So maybe along the way when we share, you learn more about him and how I cope with him. So my perspective will really be from a layman perspective. I'm a parent. I'm not a counselor or a teacher in this area. Yeah. So it's just really to share my experience as a journey along with Nigel.
Thank you, Tracy. Maybe we'll have Tina to share next.
Hi everyone. I have three boys. My second one is the one with ADHD. He also is comorbid with dyslexia and ASD, autism spectrum. Yeah, he was diagnosed at 6 years old. He's already 17. Okay, he's my number two. So my first one is 18, ADHD one is 17, and the youngest is 12. Yeah. So yeah, coming from the perspective of a mom, also as a fellow ADHD mom, I've been involved with Spark, and so I've been journeying with many other parents and families. I'm social work trained, psychology trained, and forever hands and feet and everything in a volunteer way, more than I can manage, I think. But yeah, happy to be here today. Over to you, Charlene.
Great, thanks, Tina. Maybe I'll like to invite Moon first before I share my story.
Okay, I have two girls. They're teenagers. One is 17 and one's 18. One of them has ADHD, but both have something called executive functioning issues, which we'll probably hear more about later. So I have had my hands full because of the closeness in age and the fact that they've been through like O-levels, A-levels recently, and also a lot of the aptitude tests for university. So I've been working with them very closely. Thank you.
Thank you. And that leaves me, yeah. So you've heard my story just now. So my son is already 18 years old right now. I also have a daughter at 11. Okay, and well, besides having a ADHD boy, my daughter actually has got executive functioning issues. So I struggle with, well, I would say I struggle, but it's with the two of them. And they both have some anxiety issues to a certain degree. So I'm very mindful of that. And I'm here to share my tips really on how to manage that end of anxiety when you have your kids, that struggle with that. Okay, so with that, I would say that we have many approaches really that we are, very excited to share with you today. Okay, and as we prepare our kids for exams, I would say that there is no right or wrong way, and there's no specific, way to follow. I think what is very important is for us to focus on your child, because what works for one may not work for the other. And what we are sharing with you are broad tips really on what worked for us. But please be mindful as you walk away with these tips that it is not one tip fix all. Okay, it is really something that you would need to adapt and adjust based on your relationship with your child and based on where your child is now. I would say that the relationship is very personal between you and your child. And please remember that as we share this, okay, it is not, one tip fix all. So with that, let me call on Moon to share this with the exam tips with you, because I think amongst all of us, she really went through a very grueling time in the last few months because she prepared her first daughter, okay, for university. She's now in uni. And the second one is, I believe, applying for uni this year as well. Yeah, so go ahead, Moon.
Thank you, Charlene. And just one quick housekeeping. If you guys could turn on your videos so there'll be more interaction, right? That'll be wonderful. Okay, so let me just start. As I mentioned earlier, tonight's event is really trying to be practical. Okay, and we're talking about, the difference between a fail and a pass, or a D and a C or C and a B. So we're just trying to, really do our best to support our kids. The first thing about procrastination, which is a problem for many kids, is that we really need to understand it's an emotional issue. Okay, so we need to understand why are they not as prepared as they should be, or as we would like them to be at this point in time. And it could be avoidance, right? It could be anxiety, it could be disinterest, it could be stress. So it's to give that little bit of the compassion when we're approaching this whole topic with them, as that's the underlying. Okay, and I just want to start off first by, having a realistic assessment about where your child is at this point in time. What is realistic? What is their academic capability? What has been the effort so far? Are they able to sit through, let's say, a half hour, 1 hour, 1.5 hour exam or not? Because we need to work with what we have and not what we wish we had. Okay, so it's sort of like getting down to the basics. What is the child's attitude to exams in general and to you, right? What's your relationship like? Because if the relationship is strong, then there's a higher chance of being able to work together on this. How much time is left before the exams? For some people, it could be a few weeks, it could be a few days, right? Then we plan accordingly. How much needs to be covered? So this is a sort of honest kind of discussion with your child. And believe me, I've done that with mine before. And then what is the minimum threshold to pass or to go to the next level? Because we also want to know that in our planning. If your child has been diagnosed with ADHD and is already on medication, make sure that the medication is being taken consistently in the period leading up to the exam and also during the exams. If they're not on medication yet and you're thinking of starting, maybe the best thing is to see your professional to ask the advice on this, because there are many pros and cons to starting quite late, just before the exams, right? So check with a professional on that. The analogy I like to use is like running. Our coach used to say, when you train, you put your effort into training so that on race day, you can perform. There's really no point in not doing much for training and then expecting to perform well on the day. So actually the same thing applies for medication. Some people don't want to take until the exam itself. Please take it in your training because it helps you learn better, okay? The next thing is this, in terms of scheduling, that's probably where we would start. Again, find out when the exams are, find out how much time you have left before the exams are. So a monthly kind of a scheduler or a weekly might help, be the first place to start, and then count backwards. So you know again how many days you have, okay? Even if it's 1 or 2 weeks, you can still do something with the remaining time. I'm one of those people that believe that you keep running even until you cross the finish line, you run through. You don't stop just because you're close. So never give up until it's over, okay? And then work in blocks of time. Again, depending on your child's capability, it could be 30-minute blocks, it could be 1 hour, 1.5 hours. For my kids, because they were older, and we knew that each exam was 1.5 hours, we made it 1.5 hour blocks of time so that they can get through, let's say, a past year paper. So those were the chunks of time we had. And also we built in breaks in the timetable because there's a human element, right? The last thing your kid wants to see is a big timetable with, wow, whole bunch of like studying and not much break time. So we built that in first. So there's a little bit of anticipation, right? And also remember there's a human element there. Like for my daughter that Charlene referred to earlier, she has such a heavy exam schedule. And no matter how tight I put or how well planned the schedule was, there was a human element of fatigue, right? That one you can't predict. There's also emotion. So there were times when she was too tired to proceed, even though we had planned for, a later day, right? Or an earlier start. So we have to go with the flow sometimes, just sort of like redo again and, edit, refresh it. So just keep on going. Every day is a new day, right? And sometimes it's very hard when you see there's a big stack of exams coming. So just plan it 1 day at a time. sometimes just getting through one day is good already. And in terms of the timetable, color coded, that makes it easier to see. Like she had different colors for biology, math, and chemistry, so we did that. And we also made sure we put in more time than we expected, because we always underestimate how long it takes to do something. So building that cushion, and reward him or her when they meet that goal. Reward yourself, okay, because you're supporting on the side. So make sure to celebrate that. The other strategies really quickly is something that I call traffic lighting. Okay, like the traffic light has got green, amber, and red. Traffic light with your child the subjects that they have, the topics that they have. So basically, red light means anything they have completely no clue about. It's help, emergency, right? Amber would be things that are a bit shaky. They know some, but not really. And then green is whatever is good to go, right? Because we're short of time, focus on the reds and the ambers. And how you focus on them is see your teacher about it. Go for a consultation, see your tuition teacher, right? Or even talk to your friends if you have older kids, right? Study together on those amber and those red light topics. Along with that, actually, is something that you can combine with past year papers and annotation. At this stage in time, forget about going to the textbook and reading everything beautifully, right? That's great for the beginning of the year or beginning of the term. Forget that idea, just focus on past year papers, because you want to know style. What kind of questions come out, what kind of topics, right? And you can apply the traffic lighting to that by, again, when you finish a past year paper, annotate it, right? Track, spend almost the same amount of time that you do for the paper to actually analyze it and see which are the topics on that paper that are red, amber, or green. You can forget about the green ones, focus again on the amber and the reds. And again, when you do that, do it in exam conditions, the past year paper. So you have that feel, so you get used to the feeling of stress and anxiety. And then again, consult your teacher, your tutor, your friends about those traffic light topics. When you have the mistakes, analyze it. Why did you make the mistake? Is it because of carelessness, confusion, or is it a content issue? Right? Then you know where the issue is. If it's carelessness, probably it's the easiest, right? Just spend a little bit more time, slow down the pace, right? Double check. I think that's pretty much it. These are my quick exam tips there for this one. So I'll hand the time back over to Charlene.
Hey, that sounds great, Moon. Just to highlight on what Moon has mentioned also in terms of procrastination. I think for many of us, we, to understand the ADHD child really, sometimes it's not their choice to procrastinate. Reason is because they see the piece of work as in one big piece. So that overwhelms them. So what we need to do as parents really is to help them, cut it down to little chunks. So let's say, for example, like Lego, right? They'll see it as one big Lego block. However, out of that one big Lego block is little small Lego blocks that build up that big block. And as parents, it helps for us to break down those blocks for our kids and to tell them that, hey, it is manageable. So that helps them to overcome their procrastination, okay? Especially when it comes to preparing for exams. Yeah, and talking about exams, Tracy was sharing with us that, her son actually just finished PSLE, and she had very, very interesting tips on how she actually got her son, to prepare for PSLE and how that actually helped with his, I would say, well-being as he prepared for it. Go ahead, Tracy.
Yeah, thanks, Charlene. Okay, so I think we've all had our journeys, and specifically for Nigel, okay, first and foremost, I think a lot of parents, we tend to, whatever that worked for us when we were studying, we tend to apply that on our children as well. And I admit that I'm actually a last minute learner. Okay, when I was in school, I'll play, then I'll last minute, then I'll cram, then I'll go for my exam. And I can still pass, thankfully, and still graduate. So I was actually generally quite a relaxed mom. And being from primary school, I mean, P1, how difficult can it be? P2, how difficult can it be, right? So I was actually a very chillax parent, all this while when people try to tell me that, oh, you should start preparing them very young and all that. So I was quite chill. But when he started, not doing as well, even at P2, P3, And there was one particular exam that he took that really impacted me, was that he was having his exam and the teacher fed back to me that he was so stressed over it that he was gripping the table and trying very hard to focus and write using his right hand, and he was very, very tense. And I've never seen that side of him before. So I was very thankful that the teachers actually fed back to me. And so I really highly recommend that we work very, very closely with teachers. And from then on, I realized that actually for Nigel, consistency is really the key for him. And so if you ask me when does preparation start, I know it's a little bit late, but actually, personally, I feel that from day one, right from the start, he needs to be consistently following up with his homework, his small tests, right from the start. And even if he's not able to finish it, I'm actually fine. Sometimes I do ask the teacher, hey, Nigel's not able to finish his homework today. Can he hand it up one day later and all that? And to me, it's more important that he just do along the way in bits and bite-sized pieces. Leading to exams, I try to keep him healthy, especially now with COVID. So I let him have his usual vitamins, sleep, and definitely playtime as well. He cannot not do without the playtime. I've come to recognize for him. If he wants to play his, talk to his friends, he wants to play on the laptop, play on the telephone, I do still give it to him. So I'll plan his schedule, and I'll also pace him. So I really need to watch him. Is he getting overly stressed, or do I think that he can still do some more, MCQs or OEQs tonight? And I also recognize that for my son specifically, he's a kinesthetic learner, and he really has difficulty sitting down to read. He can't just read through the science concepts. He finds it so boring. So when he was younger, I used to interact with him. I used to read, I'll ask him a question, then he'll answer me, I'll ask a question, he'll answer me, then we'll do it that way. But I mean, we all have limited time and limited energy, So after a while, I actually engaged all those Zoom last-minute refresher classes. They have like last-minute cram, they run through all the concepts for P5, all the concepts for P4. And so I leverage on all these Zoom, lessons for him. Another comment that my son gave me at the end of prelims, he said, hey mom, I realized that during my exams for my prelims, you were actually more relaxed on me, why, if Yuan can maybe even show the picture, on the day before PSLE, right, it was on a Thursday, and on Wednesday, right, honestly, I brought him fishing. I brought him fishing to Otto at Yishun. Some of the mothers or my friends that knew about it, right, they were saying, huh? Wow, you actually bring him fishing, on the day before. And I said, hey, but the next day is, is English paper, cannot study one. And then the next day math, okay lah, 1 day, 2 days, how much can you cram, right? So to me, it was very important that he was relaxed and he had the right frame of mind to actually go and do his paper. Yeah. So you can see him catching the fish and he really enjoys it. Yeah, and I think it gives him a sense of achievement. So the night before the exam, I will of course remind him to pack his usual things into his bag, dictionary calculator, set square, whatever, and to sleep early if possible. I say if possible because he does have some sleeping issues as well. But I'll prep him and start, hey, you need to go to bed already. And really, okay, for myself personally, on the day of the exam, I actually send him to school on those particular days because he needs to eat his medication before entering the school compound. There were days previously when he had his exams mid-year or whatever papers, he ever forgot his medication. And halfway through the paper, he started scrambling and started eating his medication. And if you know, the medication takes about half an hour to 45 minutes to take effect. So hence I told him, this is one area that you cannot negotiate. I will have to send you to school. You eat your breakfast and then you pop in your medicine and then you go through the school gate and I'll pray for you and you go in. Yeah. So a lot of affirmations along the way, and he really appreciate me just praying with him and squeezing his hand as well before he walks through the school gate. Yeah, for his exams. Yeah, that's what I have to share.
Wow, wonderful. I remember praying over my son for PSLE as well. However, for O levels, he just chucked me aside. He's like, I've got no time to pray over, Mom. I've got to run. So off he went. Okay, so thank you very much, Tracy. One interesting thing I'd like to share really is, as you know, I've shared earlier on that both my kids have anxiety issue. So mentioning the word exam is actually quite taboo in my house because there'll be several meltdowns going on, okay? So I leave it to my kids, okay, to prepare themselves for exams because the school does it actually quite sufficiently, okay? So I will leave it to them. However, what I do watch out during exam time is their well-being, physical and mental. So it's easy to tell because they'll start picking at their food if they're stressed. Okay, they won't be able to swallow, harder pieces of meat. Okay, and so I'll be cooking things like, softer tofu, minced meat, braised, softer meat, increase their fruits and vegetables, getting them more, even chicken essence. Okay, so my first one loves chicken essence. My second one would take a ginseng water. So you can just imagine money flowing out my pocket, but every cent is worth it. Okay, so that's what I do. I also put in little treats. So for example, they love cakes. Okay, my first one loves ji ma wu. Okay, for those of us who are Cantonese, ji ma wu la, and then it'll be peanut paste and things like that. So that's what he loves. And it'll be little things like that, to kind of cheer them on to say that, hey, we have your back. Just do what is required, And on days where they're a little bit quieter, okay, it's just to say, hey, you look a bit tired, yeah. Just to let you know, mommy's here to talk if you need someone to talk to. And don't push them, because if you're there in their face, what's going to happen is that they're going to push back. Mommy, why you're always here? I have no time for you. I need to study, right? But if you open the door to them to say that, hey, if you need to talk, we are here to talk, then they would know when to come look for you. And trust them, they actually do know that they need to talk when they need to talk. Okay, so that's my little sharing. So I'd like to invite Tina, if you have any sharing on this little exam preparation for our parents. Oops, you are muted, Tina.
Sorry. Just following along with what the other panelists have said, like what Charlene said, I think it's so important for us to know what not to keep saying. Like we think we're very clever in trying to say it differently, the 100th time. But our children hear us like millions of times, and we cannot be that far off from saying the same things. So sometimes silence is the best thing to say. Just being there, like Charlene mentioned, providing some stuff. And sometimes it's really like the vocabulary, right? Like you say, just try. And they're like, they'll say like, you think I've not been trying? You think I haven't tried this before? It's like, okay. So it's like sometimes we really fumble upon our words, even with our best efforts, right? So I think when we're trying to reduce stress and, as Moon and Charlene said, this workshop today, right, it's not about getting your child to qualify for DSA or for O's or A's in top form because it's already late. Like the fact that you're here, your child is slightly ADHD and they have been procrastinating. So all of that is like tick all those boxes. Okay, we're not in any, we don't want to pull wool over our eyes and just wish for the best and wish that they will just make it. We have to be very realistic. Yeah, and I think oftentimes listening to our child is really important. Like my son used to say, I think I'm really going to fail. And I had to sort that out between like, does he just, is he feeling low self-esteem? So he's, doesn't believe in himself. So he's saying he's failing. And after a while, I realized that actually he really knew, he was actually very self-aware that he was headed towards failing because he did fail quite a big number of subjects. So we have to sort of sift through, right? Like which part do we support a realistic and practical and actually a very awareness of like, okay, I'm going to fail, moms, what do I do? To like, just trying to boost them up on their self-esteem and say, no, you must believe in yourself. All that's going to be fluff, especially to ADHD children, because they don't like fluff. They don't like unrealistic kind of encouragements. Like we say, it's going to be okay. What do you mean it's going to be okay? I know I'm going to fail. Like, no, but it's okay. What do you mean? Like, it's not going to be okay. I'm going to fail, right? I see some of you all smiling. That's why I encourage you all to turn on your videos because it helps with the interaction and we know we're on the right track when you give us some responses. But yeah, I can see Charlene, we may have some time for a few questions before we go to the next segment.
That's right.
So, yeah.
That's right. Can I invite anybody who has questions on this segment to maybe unmute yourself and ask that question?
You could also type in the chat if you prefer to.
Hi, can I just have a question with regards to medication. My child isn't medicated, but I was advised that there's something called a medical grade omega-3 supplement. So I was wondering if you guys have heard of that and utilized that.
Yeah, so I think you're referring to Valerian.
I have no idea. I just heard it's medical grade.
Yes. So Valerian needs to be prescribed by a psychiatrist, and it needs to be monitored actually. So if you need a prescription for Valerian, you would need to check with your educational psychologist or your OT to refer you to a psychiatrist for that. My son was actually introduced to it about 3 years ago, 4 years ago now. And to him, he says it makes a difference. So I would say that medication works differently for everyone. So if you feel that you would want to try that, go ahead, check with your psychiatrist on that. Yeah, but it's really called Valerian.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Beverly. Any other questions? Okay, Lynette.
We have a question in the chat by Lynette regarding executive functioning for adults. I think you're asking for coaching, executive functioning coaching. Yeah, for adults. Any suggestions? Yeah, Charlene, you want to take that?
Well, actually, I do executive functioning coaching for students, not so much for adults. But we could talk on the side because I think Moon and the team has some recommendations. Yeah.
Yeah, we do
Moon,
know
you
some
want to share
people.
that?
Sure. Many executive functioning coaches in Singapore right now, really a handful of them. So what we are trying to do at Unlocking ADHD actually is to grow that pool. But if you do need something more urgently, just reach out and then we'll try and connect you. But we definitely are working on this because we know there's a need. Thank you.
Okay, so the next question we have here is from Mariam. She says that her 10-year-old son have problems for math in terms of problem solving and how to overcome that. Okay, so maybe I can help with this because it was the same approach that I used for my son. So what happens with problem sums is that there is a part 1, part 2, part 3. And if you have the wrong answer for part 1, there is no way you can proceed with part 2 and part 3. And what happens with ADHD children is that they are not able to see the differences between part 1, part 2, part 3. To them, everything is the same thing. So what is important is really to help them break it down. Okay, so up to today, even when I work with the youths, okay, when they have very, very long questions, is to use different color highlighters. So you notice I have like more than, okay, so my kids actually carry a pocket full of highlighters. So for the first question, they would read it very carefully and they would highlight the first part. The next part, they would highlight it to a different color and then followed the same way. And when they work out their answers, again, when they have their answers, they highlight it in that same color corresponding to the different part. And that will help them to work through the answers. Now, I would have to say that this is a habit and they would need to take time to build this up. So do work with them on this. It is not going to happen in one day and then they will change that habit tomorrow. It would need time to reinforce that. But that helped my children to be clearer on their problem sums and score better marks. Okay, and hopefully an element of carelessness will also be reduced. Yeah, so hopefully that answered your question, Mariam.
Thanks, Charlene.
You're welcome.
I take the next question regarding anger management. Yeah, any experience with anger management? Well, my son was ODD as well, although not diagnosed, but under the ADHD, if you look at the diagnosis, they have the one of the skills is oppositional. So he was very high on the oppositional part, which meant that, you know, anytime I talk to him, the first thing that comes back is always a counter and a very loud voice. Okay, so I will also tend to escalate, and the two of us will just go like, right, and just escalate to each other. And that was pretty much like a lot of the primary school. In spite, okay, of me being a social worker and all of that, you look at me here, look so calm, right? Can be on panel, but we all have our days, okay? So I remember there's so many times where I go like, we don't want to be yelling at each other, right? And then he'd be like, right. And then my husband's just like standing at the side, like, you know, but he just couldn't not engage. You know, we were both, and I noticed, especially for him, he's not the kind, if I say, okay, I can't talk now, you know, let me cool down, or like I just walk away, he couldn't take that. It would also make him have an outburst. But I realized, you know, coming from this perspective, it takes both hands to really make effort to communicate. And we actually persisted, because I could see he wanted to communicate, so did I. Of course, I at one point I was always like, okay, you just listen to me, right? Like, look at me, you know, like, first he has ASD too, right? So somebody doesn't look at me in the eye, you know, and then blah, 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 this is what you have to do, and this, blah, blah. And of course, with that power thing, you know, because at first I'm older and sort of bigger, but you know, when you're boys, they overshoot you very fast. After a while, you know, we had to really keep negotiating. Like, he would also start talking back to me in the same style I was talking to him, and I'll be really annoyed with that, right? But then I realized that he's just mimicking me, like, you know, so it's really a learning process where eventually I had to go, we cannot yell, right? Like, let's keep it quiet. Okay, let's not go out. You know, like, we literally had to give each other eye, right? Rather like conductor, right? Like, kind of, okay, like, and I have to make sure my voice doesn't go above his, even though he's loud, right? And literally, like, physically refrain the thing from escalating. Okay, so it takes, and this is only one component, right? I'm sure anger is many other ways, but I knew that if I just head on collided with him, I oftentimes triggered him and provoked him to a greater aggression. Okay, then I'll get really upset with him for being angry, not realizing that actually I contributed a lot to it because I was so interrogative, you know, so confrontational. So it really is about growing with your child, figuring out what actually they're angry about. You know, and if they're angry with you, why? Which part of you are they angry with? Because they are usually not angry with all of you. They know that you love them, right? But they are just angry with maybe the accusatory tone, yeah, maybe, or the way we ask certain questions that sort of assume they didn't do anything, they didn't try hard enough, right? So it's oftentimes in the blaring, right, that we actually hear the truth coming from them. So don't be too afraid sometimes when it does come out in a blast, but listen. Don't just be angry, you know, like, you know, have a power struggle, who must win, that kind of thing. It's not. Listen, go and process. There are many times after outbursts, I go back and I just cry to myself, you know, like, why am I doing all this parent coaching? Why am I doing all this? I can't, how can I do all this, right? If I'm like that to my own son. But I learn, you know, I think through, what did he just say to me? What was he scolding me about? And then what were the issues? And then I'll readjust, I'll think, I'll be creative, and then we come back again. And now I can tell you, we can have a calm conversation about the most, you know, really very intense things sometimes. And I can see him making so much effort, you know, and thankfully, I don't see myself, but okay, I make a lot of effort. So I'm not yelling at him either. And we can both have a calm conversation, you know, even when I know he's very angry about something or he's very triggered, you know. So it has been a journey, but it really is a journey. Both sides needs to grow. Don't just say, I will send him for, you know, anger management, or I go and check myself to anger management. Yes, if that is necessary, please go and access those resources. But oftentimes it's through the day by day, the willingness to listen, to express, and then to hear each other and say what you really want. You know, like, hey, I really don't mean to yell at you, but if you yell so loudly, like one time I was telling him this, I have to yell because you're yelling so loudly, I can't even hear myself. And I have to yell because you won't stop talking, and I have to, you know, that kind of thing. But of course, there's a poor excuse. So after a while, okay, I still cannot yell. No matter what excuse I have, I cannot yell, you know. So sorry, a very long answer to that one question.
Yeah,
I think it will bring us to the next segment. Yeah, go ahead,
yes,
Charlene.
correct. So we do realize that we do have a lot more questions to answer, but let us continue with our segment first, and then we'll address these questions later, okay? So please don't mind us. Okay, so the next segment, it was Tina who led us into the next segment, okay? Because that is really about communication. And I think the biggest thing that I really heard from Tina is connecting with your child. So parenting is a journey that you really need to connect with your child. If you don't connect with them, really at the end of the day, it's very difficult for us to say, so he's out of, he's out of character. How do we then support him, right? Okay, so with that, maybe I would like to really invite, maybe I'll invite Tracy this time to share really about communication with your child, connecting with your child.
Okay. So for me, I strongly, believe that communication actually really is, building relationship. That is the underlying key to communication. And before they would actually really listen to you, they need to know that you care for them. And for Nigel, because he's P6 this year, he's really hitting adolescence. I'm beginning to see more of this power struggle that Tina mentioned. Because when they're younger, you talk to them, they'll keep quiet, they'll listen. As he P5, P6, you start seeing him retorting back already, and you start standing up. And yes, he's like nearly my height now, So when a daddy yells at him, he will yell back. And so I'm very mindful that, and he's going to need to go to Sec 1, and he'll start having longer hours, CCAs, and have more friends and influences over his life. So during the critical years now, I'm mindful to spend more time with him and to build relationship with him. Okay. And so, there's also a Bible verse that says that, if you train up a child in the way that he should go, and that when he's old, he will not depart from it. And so I really believe in that. And so I try to keep my children as close to me as possible, so that when they depart, when they're in secondary school, hopefully they don't venture off too far, because they remember what mommy and daddy has taught them as well. So one thing that I do is I look at the 5 love languages, and I take that as a guide for myself. And in order to build his identity and to show affirmation of my love for him and all that, one of the things I did is actually words of affirmation. And if Yuan can show, I actually did Nigel a chart, and I put his picture in the center. And if you see at the bottom left, there's a picture of him, Nigel. This was about 2 years back when we went to Taiwan. And and so I let him show the picture, and he didn't know what I was doing, but I said, hey, show the picture of yourself. And I did this, and I said, hey, Nigel, he is a problem solver. He's imaginative, he's helpful, he's adventurous. So I put this on his board in front, because that's where, he has all his schedule and his timetable and all that. And I put it in front of him because I think that, children with ADHD, they receive so much negative feedback from their friends, from the schools, and even for yourself, I'm sure you get a lot of calls from your, from teachers and all that. So I want to tell him that no, you're all these things. You are more than what the teachers say. That there's many aspects that have you, and the other thing that I do is actually also to write cards to both my children. So must be fair, not just to the ADHD child, right? The other one must also write also. And because sometimes she will say that I neglect her, when I try to spend more time with him. And the reason why I write the cards is also because sometimes I admit that as an Asian parent, sometimes we are quick to judge and quick to comment, but we don't give praise enough. And so hence I write cards and I try to surprise them, so sometimes I put it in the wallet. So when they open up, when they want to spend money during recess time, they say, hey, mommy has given me a card. Or even in their lunch box, their snack box, then they, and then, so it comes to a point where they say, hey, you very long never write me cards already, so they will say things like that. So it's to affirm them and to show them that I love them. Yeah. And so when it comes to gifts can be, buying them their favorite food, or even, buying them Lego. My son likes Lego. So today actually is his birthday and I bought him a Lego. He wrangled himself out. So okay, I got discount, 10% discount, so I got him a Lego. Yeah. And then acts of service. So I ordered in his favorite food. He likes fish and chips from Fish and Company, and when he tell me that his socks has worn out and and he needs new socks, right? I'll be prompt, I'll get him new socks. And because, my son is so sensory, so all these little things actually does matter to him, and to show him that I do care, And I try to spend as much quality time, or meaningful, dedicated time with him. So I'd be very deliberate so that he knows that, hey, this is the time that I've given to you, and you decide how you want to spend it. So usually in the long holidays in June or in December, I would say, okay, I give you 1 day, of my time. Up to you what you want to do that day. And so he'll pick lah, so he was younger, he say, oh, I'll go longkang fishing, then I'm going to watch a movie, and then I want to go this place to eat, So I let him choose what he wants to eat, so in the morning, of course, he must fuel up, right? So he wants to eat McDonald's, fine, eat whatever you want. And then we went USS, and then, so it's also, when you do things like that, and very often it's a few gifts, like love languages, come together, be gifts, acts of service, all go into one. Yeah, and through, building all this acts of service or this love languages, right? It helps me to relate to him beyond exams, and as a parent, that I also, have fun with him. I relate to him differently. And, I also have to tell you that this is something that is also beyond my comfort level, because honestly, I do not take roller coaster rides. The first time I took it was actually when I was in my 30s, and really because of him, I have to force myself to go all these rides. And my husband actually has had back surgery before, so my hubby doesn't sit all these roller coaster rides, so it has been mommy that do it. So he knows that it's special, and he's special to me. And then physical touch, I still give him lots of, the last one is physical touch for love languages, and so I give him lots of hugs and squeezes, and so some people say that for boys, they do not want physical touch as they get older, because they're more conscious, then, oh, what if my friends see and all that. But thank God that Nigel is still open to it. And so even every night, because I hug him so much, right, and to assure him and to affirm him, he every night will ask me to give him hugs before going to bed as well. Yeah. So, or sometimes when I walk past him or when he's studying, to say, hey, I'm glad that you're progressing and focusing, I will like rub his head or squeeze his shoulder, and say, hey, well done, continue, press on. Yeah. So I'll do things like that. Yeah.
Wow, very interesting, because for a boy, normally they would not actually want hugs and so on, which is actually quite interesting, because my boy, when he turned 13, suddenly he was all huggy. So it was, on days he could come up to me when he's having a bad day and go, Mom, I need a hug. And a big, tight hug because I had a really bad day. So I'm like, okay,
yeah,
that's good. That's fine. And yeah, and I do enjoy those hugs. Enjoy them while it lasts. Okay, because my boy is now 18. So yeah, we still have a few more years to go. Okay, so having said that, does Moon and Tina have anything to add to that?
Tina, you want to go first? I'm just pulling up my own notes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think communication, really assuring them in a way that they understand. I start to notice, okay, I mean, my son has told me many, many times, but I only now more dealing with this part of what he has told me, that my tone of voice, even when I'm supposedly calm or not yelling, it goes into this very, chop kind of mode, okay, like you listen to me, or okay, this is the thing, okay, so blah, 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 blah. And it just makes him feel like I'm scolding him. He knows I'm not, okay, and he will tell me, okay, I know you don't need to scold me, but then it just shuts him down, And I tell you, literally, maybe 2 weeks ago, caught it, literally visually caught it, and caught myself, going in that mode, because he asked a question, so I was trying to answer him, right? And so I was going into this a bit like a teacher kind of a preacher mode, and then I just saw him shrink, just somehow this, and the eyes and the tone. So I had to catch myself, change my whole posture, because I was actually a bit separated from him. I was dining table, he's at the sofa. So I had to move to him, really really literally I'm doing this physically to not with my arm gesture, but I'm just saying I had to really switch mode to go use a different tone. I could be saying the same thing, but really intentionally just soften my whole voice. And I tell you, this is like he's 17. Okay, so I've had like 11 years of him being diagnosed with ADHD and having our escalating yelling matches. Okay, maybe last 3 years, thankfully, it's toned down. But even up to now, I'm still learning, like, how do I communicate and bother with what he really told me? Because I just kept going, I'm not scolding you, right? I'm just telling you this thing. I love you very much, right? But it just comes across like in this tone that is not helpful for him. I mean, I can go like, okay, it's you, why are you so sensitive, right? Like, okay, all of many of our children have rejection dysphoria, right? Yes. So they would just take all these cues and think it's rejection when it's not. I'm just trying to get my point across. But I realized that, okay, that's going to totally not get my point across. My son's going to just like shut down based on his trauma, I'm sure, that I have created, in his memory. So I thought that was like just 2 weeks ago. And thankfully, I softened enough for us to continue to have a conversation. And he didn't shut down, he didn't roll his eyes, he didn't like go into his mode of like, you're not answering me, that kind of thing. So I just keep learning. Communication is an ever learning thing. It's not just going for one course and then you got it. It's like that. Like sometimes our brain a bit older already. It takes that long for you to catch it, to really respond to it. Like I may know it in my head, but to actually catch myself in that moment, it took that long. I'm telling you also, hopefully it gets faster for you, okay?
I find that parenting is, I just find that parenting needs to be very mindful all the time, which is very exhausting, frankly, okay?
Yes. I do agree. But I would like to assure everybody, in terms of parenting, please, sometimes we do have our bad days and sometimes we do have our good days. Just be mindful that you are doing your best as parents, okay? And that's the biggest assurance I can give you. There are days where my son just stares at me in the face and he says that, you know what, mommy, you do all these things, right? But then you're so mean to me. You keep shouting and then your accusational tone, it's not nice. I'm like, huh? But I didn't mean it that way. No, but it came across that way. So exactly what Tina was saying. And the truth is our ADHD kids are sensitive. Even my EF kid is sensitive. And when I spend a little bit more time with the brother, that's it. I also get into trouble. So it's one of those things. For the longest time, she was telling me, you love Coco more than me. So it's something that we all learn, and it's really a journey. And most important really is that let's not judge our kids. Let's really listen to them for what they're saying and not for the underlying things that we think they're saying. And I think that's important.
Yeah, I just want to jump in just now because you're asking me about a couple of points, right? So I just want to roll them off as, sure. For my kids, right? We try to focus on the fact that we're not looking at results. We're looking at progress. Okay, because they were runners, so we speak running language sometimes. Because we try to aim for personal best. That means incremental best, even if it's like 1% better, right? We still celebrate the small wins. Because if you just focus on that small little bit that is better than previous, right? Over a period of time, you look back, right? There's actually a significant improvement. So again, we're not looking at, standing at the foot of the mountain and looking and say, oh my goodness, it's so high, I can't reach the peak. You're looking at what's the next step, You don't worry about right up there, right? One small thing at a time, one small improvement, and then focus on what you can control. One of the things that our kids can control actually is their attitude and also how much effort they put into things. So recently for my daughter, we were telling her, look, there's so many things outside your control, right? COVID, the exam situation, everything. But you know what? Just do your best on what you can control. The rest, the outcome will take care of itself. So we kept on having to reassure that. And I think Tracy had mentioned about spiritual encouragement, right? If that's your family values, pray with them, pray for them, share inspirational quotes, motivational quotes. And then sleeping is another big issue. We tend to overlook how important sleep is. And particularly for ADHD kids, right? And ADHD adults, sleep is a huge challenge for all of us. And actually, the research has shown that if you don't get enough sleep, then your mind cannot really absorb and process the information. And how can you think clearly and study for exams, right? So one of the things that my husband was sharing with me a few years ago, and also recently, one of our panelists on the youth team was sharing, is that they try not to do anything after studying and before sleeping. Right? Between the time that they finish studying and the time they sleep, try not to, let's say, go on your devices, go on social media, that kind of thing, because it tends to so-called juggle things up. You want to go to sleep, but the last thing is, having done that study, feeling at peace, and then just let it all process when you sleep. So Kai, who was one of our panelists, said that he doesn't check his phone before he sleeps during exam time. He just want to descramble things, right? That seems very painful or very extreme, right? But not using devices, not gaming, just have a chat with your child, right? Because it's a teamwork. Try to get a cooperation. Maybe not totally go cold turkey, but lesser time, but there's still time. So just plan that way. And I think you had talked about parental self-control, about tone, right? Communication. I found I caught myself every time I talk to them, it's always exam related. So I tried to mindfully not do that. So when I speak with them, I try to introduce more things like, something funny, a meme, like some gossip, whatever that is not related, because they really need a break from that. And yes, a lot of times my kids said, why are you over my shoulder? So I also tried not to do that. So even though I think that she could have studied in a better environment, let's say, like more sterile, more uncluttered, but they have their own style. And at a certain stage, right, you have to trust that they know themselves better than you know them. This is what the older kids are, right? So the other thing I wanted to share was that we need to acknowledge past successes and also the effort that they're putting into things. If they have a past success, remind them, because it's so easy to forget, right? And the effort is to affirm that they have put work into it. So every time they feel like, they're losing steam, right? It's to remind, hey, look, I worked hard on this, I can do it. That's important. And also give them the space to vent or unload. My younger daughter always complains that, Mom, I don't want you to solve my problem. I just want someone to listen. Why are you always trying to jump and solve my problem? I can solve it myself. So I've learned. And also be present when they're talking to you, because a lot of us, myself guilty as well, we are doing something else, looking at our phone or whatever, right? It is that being present, the eye engagement, right? So that they know that they matter to us, and always remind that we love them. And it's not, and we remind them why we love them, and it's not performance-based reasons. Yeah, that's my sharing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I just add on?
Yes, go ahead, Tracy.
I like what Moon shared about cheering them on. And in my experience, I'm the one that actually brings my son more, fishing and doing some of these sports and all that. And very interesting, I said, hey, why don't you go fishing? Auntie also can go because I have the helper. Sometimes I'm really tired. So I say, Auntie, go with you, go fishing, or Daddy go with you. And then he said, no, I don't want, I want you to go with me. I said, why? Anybody go with you? I'll just bring you there and fish, what? And he commented saying, no, I like you to go with me because whenever I catch a fish, you say like, wow, good job, and I mean that response honestly surprised me. And I think it was also, I'm thankful that he shared that, because he really needs affirmation and he wants to hear that, so I think that as parents of ADHD kids, especially when it's something that's not physical, people can't tell that they have this condition, so people assume in a sense that they're like everybody else, right? If everybody can run this fast, you can run this fast. If everybody can climb the tree, you can climb the tree. Why can't you? So the people can tell. But we are the ones who advocate for them. We are the ones who cheer them on. And they really need someone to really cheer, And it can be, and I think the relationship is built not just in, oh, well done, you've passed from 20 to 30, 30 to 40, but also even little things are like, when you play the game, wow, you got, you managed to, I don't know, ball stars, you win, don't know what level, achieve what level. They want to hear your cheering on, that you're behind them, not just academically, but in all other aspects as well. Yeah. So in my case, it's fishing. Wow, you managed to catch a fish so big, and they love that. Yeah.
Thank you, Tracy. I think really very much so we have to remember that for our kids, we definitely need to affirm them. They have been, unfortunately, filled with so much negativity because of their condition. For example, why can't you focus in class? How come you're sleeping in class? You know, why can't you do this? Why are you not handing in your homework in time? And they get this, I tell you, so many times in a day that sometimes it just becomes, you know, wind in their ears, you know, so they're not going to listen very much. But if you pay attention to them a little bit by saying, oh, great job. I think you did put in a lot of effort to complete that piece of homework. And it wasn't an easy thing. So I'd like to, you know, thank you for putting aside that time to do it. And I feel really appreciated, right? And having said that, I think it's also important to engage the people around your child. You know, after all, they say that it takes a village to raise a child. And in my case, I would say that it took every single person that I knew to raise my two kids. Because even in school for my son, the allied educators were there behind him. His form teachers, his head of level head, so many people, even the school counselor, even the principal was there with him holding his hand during each meltdown that he had when he was in school. So the interesting thing is when he started on medication, he went into massive meltdowns and he had a successive meltdown 3 times in I believe it was 2 weeks. And I had to reach out to the allied educators and I had to tell them, alert them to watch out in case he melted down in school again. And true enough, it did. And the whole day he was crying. Imagine a big boy of 15 years old then. He was crying the entire day and he couldn't do anything. He couldn't talk. He was just, you know, paralyzed. He couldn't do anything. And my heart went out to him, right? But I would say he's very blessed. The allied educator was there to support him. His student counselor was there to support out, not just the student counselor, but also the school counselor. He was a student counselor. So everybody was there, you know, supporting him behind the way. So in that sense, I would say that engage with the people around him and surround him with people whom he knows that cares and support him. And that's very important. So with that, I would say that also brings us to our next topic, really, which is how do we parents, or before I go on to the next topic, does anybody want to add on Tina, Tracy, Moon, before we go on to the next topic of really taking care of ourselves as parents?
I think there's a question on devices, but maybe we can tackle it in the next segment as well, because that can be a really long answer.
Yes. Okay, so our next segment really is parenting strategies or looking after ourselves, right? So for those of you who had the chance to watch our videos, well, what I shared actually was that as parents, there will be times where we feel that we haven't done enough for our child. And the truth is there will be times where we will feel that way. Or like Tina had shared, it's like, I know all these strategies. Why am I shouting at him? You know, why am I doing this? You know, and I would really like to assure all parents there are good days and there are bad days. It happens to the best of us because not forgetting, we are not separated from ourselves when we parent. We bring the external stress that we have faced into this parenting, you know, circle as well. And therefore, it's also sometimes very difficult to step out when you know, step out of whatever stress and whatever situation you're in order to be there for your child and to parent your child. So with that, I would say, I would like to invite Moon, because I would say really she is one very stressed out mom that has gone through so much for her 2 kids within, I think, this last year that I've known her. She has done tremendous stuff. I mean, there were times where I also had to remind her, okay, that I would say, you know, sometimes we project our own anxiety onto our kids and we need to be checked ourselves. So yeah, Moon, maybe you would like to share your experience with that?
You mean about stress relief, is it? How do I help myself?
Yes.
That's a very good
So
question. I definitely needed it. Okay. I do a couple of things, so it's not just one thing, but it's a combination of different things. I'm a social person, you know, by my nature, So one of the things that helped was actually, you know, making sure that I was in touch or engage with people, whether it's own family members or people outside the family. So whether it's going for regular walks or jogs or runs with friends. And then, you know, while we're exercising, there's fresh air, it's also the time to complain and vent, okay? But that was one of them, okay? The other thing I've been trying to do regularly is to journal. You know, like I do like my daily devotions and I journal. So in my journal, I use my own structure. I call it TIPS, TIPSS. I start my journal with T, Thanksgiving. What happened between yesterday and today that I'm thankful for? It could be something very small, but something like that. The I is what has improved. What have I improved? It could be as little as maybe I managed to make myself wake up earlier today rather than waking up the usual time, right? It could be I cleaned that corner on my desk, you know? But at least, you know, there's some progress, so it makes you feel better. Then the third P is basically, you know, prayer items, things I pray for myself or other people. So I'm thinking of things beyond myself and people beyond myself. Then the S, I read the scripture, and then the last S, I share what I learned with somebody. So, but that keeps that structure, sort of keeps me on track. Yeah, so those are my two main ones. It's basically the social part, the exercise and, you know, meeting other people, having a place to vent, and then the internal part, the reflecting, and then the communicating.
Well, that's really very nice. Any tips to share, Tracy?
I think for myself, I've you know, my son is P6, and I think this year, you know, seeing how he fared even in his mid-year, his prelims, I think that it's been honestly a journey for me, and I've come to also realize myself better. Honestly, I think that sometimes having children kind of challenge your own personal beliefs and what you value. And honestly, for me, academics has never been a problem for me. And sometimes, you know, when I see Nigel struggle, it sometimes puzzles me, honestly. And I'm actually an unstructured person, but I still manage to somehow or other, you know, pull through and still go to university and still pass out, you know, without much intervention from my parents. And I think that I've had a journey whereby I had to reframe my mind. I had to accept who he is as a person, you know, and come to peace with that, you know. And if Nigel didn't fare very well for his prelims, but he has improved from his mid-year, and I see the efforts that he has done. And if he's going to, you know, actually there's a WhatsApp group chat, and I was actually asking them, you know, what if Nigel should he go to a boys' school or should he go to co-ed school, which is better? Should he go NA? Should he go Express if he's borderline? And I think I've come to realize that, you know, he needs to progress at his own pace. And I need to be a parent to support him. You know, there are moments, so in a sense, first is to recognize my son as who he is and what he is, you know, and he's more than his grades. Two is that I've come to accept it, that because he's 2 to 3 years behind his peers, certain scaffolding is required. I cannot have the expectations that he's a P6, he's going to be 13 years old, he can do all this by himself. I have to recognize that there's certain aspects that he's not so strong in. And I, as a parent, might need to step in. So even though other people, I see other kids, they're able to do this, I cannot compare. I need to support my son. You know, if I need to send him to school for his exams to make sure he takes his medication, this is something I'll do out of love for him. If I need to help him to schedule, make sure that he has calculator in his bag, you know, and all that, it's something that I will have to journey along with him until he's able to do it, you know, and accept it as it is, and don't like scold him, and then also don't make it a big thing in a sense. Because initially I was like, why you cannot remember? Is it very difficult? Compared to this, you just do it, bring it along. I mean, inside I was, you know, questioning all these things in my mind. But I think I've come to accept it as it is. You know, and sometimes another thing is that people around you might not recognize him, you know, and you know that his in a sense his deficits or his inability to do certain things, and they will also make comments, you know, be it from my friends, be it from my relatives, be it from my parents even, you know, and sometimes it hurts, the things that they say. And I think I've come to just that it's like, initially it hurts me, but after that I said, okay, they don't understand. It's all right. It's okay. There are other people that do, and reach out to these people and they will be your support group, So I think that having a support group is actually very important, and so they are on a similar journey, they're like-minded. And fourth is, do not be afraid to ask for help. So I have a helper, thankfully, who will help me cook because I'm bad at cooking, and she'll help me to remember this and that and prepare the children, and I'm very thankful. And I must not be afraid to delegate help or to ask for help. So I'll tell my hubby, hey, can you just do this? Or when I'm so angry with my son, right, and I really want to bounce out already, I'll tell my hubby, take over, cannot, I'm going to explode, take over, before I do anything silly or whatever. And things that I do for myself personally, away from the family, is I exercise, I run. The more frustrated I am, the longer I run, the further I run, the more I run. So I'll have to expend my energy as well. So I'll exercise. I read, as and when, to have new inputs, new insights, to take my mind off the situation, because life is, this phase of their life is going to be, just this is just a short fragment, life is actually much, much more than that. And we need to still equip ourselves, still need to know what's out there in the world, and still share and to, let them see the world, that it is much, much bigger than just, exams and ADHD, and we are so limited by this. So you need to help them to see the world beyond it as well. And so I have to equip myself so that I can help them. And then for me, I'm also social, so I need to catch up with friends. I need to ventilate. I will WhatsApp them and what happened, blah, 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 and they'll understand. They say, fine, go ahead, ramble, lament, all you want. I'll respond when I can. And I'm thankful for these group of friends that listen to me ramble all the time. Yeah.
Just to jump in on that one, right?
Yeah.
I would say for self-care, right? If you're in some parent WhatsApp chat group, I think most people are, right? If it feels too toxic, okay, you can always exit, okay, or mute it, because that sometimes plays on your mental quite a bit. Especially most parents they may not admit it, right? So you won't know, but most parents seem to have neurotypical kids, right? So definitely not the same situation as you say. It makes it even worse. Okay, so again, exit or mute chat groups if you need to. And the second thing is, don't worry about labels like helicopter parenting. I used to try to avoid being called a helicopter parent, but there's nothing wrong with it because our kids need the scaffolding at this stage in their lives. Okay, in terms of executive functioning, right, ADHD kids can be 3 to 8 years behind their peers, the biological age, right? So bear that in mind. So if your kid is 15 years old, they may actually be 12. So the expectation, right, adjust accordingly. Yeah, going back to Charlene.
Yeah, I would say, both Moon and Tracy brought up very important points, right? Really, I think in the thread of that really was connecting with your child, being there for them for who they are, and yet, knowing, how you project yourself on your child as well. Having said that, I want to just share something that a very wise educator shared with me, right? When I actually told him that I was struggling to parent my son, okay, when he was first diagnosed. And what he said was, if you focus on the wrong things when it comes to your son, what's going to happen is that you're going to have a lot of pushback. So at that time, I was focusing very much on his academics because he had so much potential, right? But I forgot the other things, okay, which is he is very sociable. He can, talk about any topic under the sun, and his value systems are in place, as in he was very religious, he was very pious. I think he was the only one in our family who prayed all the time, but that was what he did, right? So the truth is, if we focus on, let's say, for example, their character building, okay, building, values in their life, connecting with just enjoying them for who they are. When the academics, or when they were ready, or they feel that their academic side is important for them, they will run after it. We don't have to run after them to run after their academic achievements, because they will do it naturally. Okay, so that's really my small bite there. And the other thing that I'd like to remind all parents really before I pass it on to Tina is that we cannot pour from an empty cup. Meaning that if we are empty ourselves, we have nothing to give because we are all drained, we're exhausted, we just will not be able to bring ourselves to, parent our kids. Because if you're already angry internally, it's going to come out. Okay, if you are, if you have nothing to give because you haven't topped up your cup, okay, then it also affects your relationship with your child. So sometimes really it's just enjoying that time with them. Having said that, I'd like to pass this on to Tina, to share her little sharings on really, how we should, or we can, or how she looks after herself.
I think I'll try and answer the question about devices because we're sort of running out of time, as well as address this thing, tie it all together, right? I think when parents are always very worried. I see all the questions about you all agreeing with Candy's question and each other when you talk about devices. It's something we all cannot run away with. But I want you all to ask yourself a question, okay? When you hold your device, what are the functions that you use? And how often are you on it? And when we are on it, what are we doing? Okay, of course, it's different for everyone. Yeah, so some of us, we have our down times, right? So we actually have nothing. Like, okay, clear WhatsApp. That one can take like half an hour to 1 hour sometimes, depending on how many thousand groups we are in. Clear, right? Nothing to clear already. Check back and forth, Telegram, WhatsApp. What do we do? Oh, Instagram. Oh, Facebook, right? Okay, like gossip like that lah. It's the social life, right? Okay, check, right? Or, oh, I need to buy something, right? Okay, Shopee, right? Lazada, 10/10 sale coming up. Better go and heart shape, go and like the whatever I want to buy, that's on sale. Okay, what I'm trying to say is gadgets have many functions, and as our children are especially so for COVID, using it for HBL, that's a big function, right? For sure, education. Other things that are educational may not come through HBL and online homework, but it's things that your child is curious about. Videos they Google about, even the games they play. If you actually see what they're playing, they're watching videos about people playing the games they're playing and giving comments about all the different things to do and the different levels, and they're enjoying themselves, right? So at that point, it is both educational. I see some of you all like laughing away until I have to turn off the camera. Thank you very much. It's both educational to them because they're learning about their game, as well as recreation because it's out of homework, right? At that point. So their brain is not really being fried. They're just really like enjoying themselves, but they're actually still focusing, Yeah. So when we realize that actually they also need gadgets for the whole variety of functions that it plays, recreation, education, and communication. They also use Discord a lot more than any other thing. Sometimes even TikTok is a way of communicating, right? Even Instagram is old-fashioned for them already. They do something, they shoot a video, they comment about something, and then they let people comment back to them. So that's their way of getting the likes and all that, which we do through our WhatsApp chats and through our old-fashioned methods, right, of verbal communication. They have other ways. So when we realize that, we need to know that we can't just rob it of them because it's exam period. Okay, or we are getting very kanchong, right? Like, oh, tomorrow is exam, then today you still like that, right? And I see and read all this thing about procrastination, right? And you come and you catch your child watching a video when they're supposed to be studying. Have conversations with them. Okay, so I mentioned a bit in the chat that if they're younger, yes, you can scaffold a lot more. You can, guide them. You can say, okay, this is the time you do your gadget. That is the time you do homework. But when they're older, when we don't have as much control, have conversations, check in, come in a more relaxed manner. Don't go, what are you watching? What's this thing? Like just, it was a thing. Like, what are you watching? And assess. I had conversations with my son because he was in visual arts. Okay, he loves to draw, and that was his skill. So he was also in the art school, and he drew a lot. So he was drawing while watching videos. Okay, because so he's doing homework, right? Project while watching videos. So I always tell him, how on earth can you watch a video when your eyes need to be where you are drawing? Then you can't dispute me, right? So I said, okay, if you need to do something that you don't need your eyes to be where your hand is, then for sure you can watch some video. Can you please make sure you choose a video that's mostly audio so that you can still draw? So you literally have to see what they're doing to assess and speak in a way that they cannot dispute you. They go, okay lah, you got a point, they won't say out loud lah, but in their head, hopefully it goes in there. And have those interactions so that, really this last section is about building the relationship, right? What is mostly important. And I think one of the big things as well is being very clear what is our role and our relationship with them. It's not to protect them from failure. It's not to protect them from themselves. They will fail themselves, okay? They will procrastinate to the point that they will fail and they will feel very badly about it. How do you journey with them in that way? Like I told you about my son saying, I think I'm going to fail, right? And he really was out on the trajectory already of failing. How do you talk to him in a way that doesn't keep discounting the fact that he knows he's going to fail, right? How do you go, don't just say it's okay, but sort of, okay, what are your options? Or, let's talk about, so what if you fail? And, it's okay to fail, but what does that mean? What will happen? Okay, you may need to repeat the year. So you literally talk about these options, not like it's, with emotions and crying because you yourself are heartbroken that your own son is having to repeat. Be more professional, as if you're counseling your friend's son, and just think through and figure out. I came from a direction I mentioned, I'll do it really quickly, that in the end I had to pull my son out of school before he finished his year 4. Yeah, because his mental health was so stressed about him being aware that he's failing. He already actually didn't pass his year 3 promotional exams. So he either had to repeat or he was going to continue to year 4 but drop a few subjects and leave after year 4 to go to poly or any of the arts institutions because of his track. And but COVID hit last year. That was his year 4 year. And he just really couldn't keep up. Already he was backlogged, right, with work. So whatever effort he had just wasn't able to catch him up. And he was just pulling all these super late nights, just feeling really bad, suicidal already since year 3. But he would tell me, yeah, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think of killing myself, and then he's really depressed, really in very low state. So I was the one in the end that said, as we talked about all the options, we actually met the whole conference with the teachers, VP, and he even said, what else can they do? What can I ask for? To not handing homework. They also still need to expect me to hand in, so he was very, very aware of what the teachers could or could not do in a sense. So in the end, I said, okay, it was about this time, like August, September, we said, why don't we just leave? Okay, like, you're going to fail. So we calculated all the things, but we said, we'll just face it, because for your mental health, I'd rather have you alive and recuperating at home than suddenly, gone, right? We had this conversation, just not with my husband, no, I'm talking with my own son about suicide even. Yeah, and it's important for you all to do that as well. Access some resources that are available outside, okay, how to talk to your child about such things. And in the end, I said, okay, let's stop it, let's pull out. So we had this big discussion, and he actually was very surprised because he never gave himself the option, interestingly, right? He always thought he had to pull through, he had to force himself to do it. He was trying so hard. So when I gave him finally that route and he decided, okay, with all the discussion, and he agreed that, it was not my decision. I just gave it as an option. He had to agree and make sure that, he decided himself. We took that route. Okay, of course, after that, long story, thankfully the school was very supportive. He didn't have to sit for exams, but they still gave him an end of year cert and all of that because of a legitimate MC, things like that. But we had to get to that point, of journeying, of not being like keep clashing. I realized many times I come to the room, I catch him watching video, right? First thing I'll be saying, what are you doing, John? I do have homework. Are you finished with your homework? Right? All the same old things that we think, like I said just now, no matter how interesting we say it, it's still the same old thing. We're just hounding them for homework. What are you doing watching these videos, right? So let's really backpedal. Let's like stop all that, like listen, look, observe what is really your child struggling with. And many of them, especially ADHD, they're not very vocal. My boy is actually very aware for an ADHD boy. They're not very aware. They may not be able to tell you where they're struggling, what's happening. And that's the more dangerous ones, who just keep saying it's okay, mom, or it's whatever. But then when you see them, like Moon shared in the chat earlier, I think there's some telltale signs, you know, or even Charlene, I don't know if we got to that, right? They don't want to eat, or they're fidgeting with at meal times, you know, so you know that the stomach's full of, you know, gastric juices, you know, they're getting nervous and all that. So really try to pick up on these signs, you know, come alongside them so that you can help interpret certain things for them and say, hey, this is nervousness, you know, because you're facing stress. And actually it helps give them the words. Like we do that, no, when the toddlers and children, right, small children, we teach them like, this is anger, this is sadness. ADHD children, we need to do that because their social communication skills are not so strong either. And their EF skill also deals with emotional regulation. So identifying the emotions, identifying what are the stressors actually helps them to think through what they're going through, but without spoon feeding them and overloading them. Okay, so I'm talking about the upper secondary now for this type of tips. Okay, when they're younger, by all means, have a bit more sessions with them, guide them, literally turn off gadgets means turn off gadgets, you know, have those physical routines. But when they're older, don't just snatch it, you know, turn off, plug out, unplug the Wi-Fi, because then you have aggression, you have huge meltdowns, explosions, and then you're going to attribute it entirely to them and say, well, my son has anger problem. But you don't realize that you are the one who triggered it. Okay, yeah, so really hone in on the relationship, communication, because you want to have your son for lifetime left. Or O-level, A-level can always repeat. There are other options. They can do other forms of accreditations, diplomas, certifications, whatever that will lead them to the path that they need to go on. But the relationship with your child, don't let it go just because you're so kanjong about devices, videos, things like that. Okay.
Just want to jump in on Tina's point. Just want to jump in on that one. You know, I found that because ADHD kids, right, they don't have the ability to plan and organize very well. So in terms of looking at plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, right, alternative routes, they really need our support and help there, okay, when trying to make decisions. And I found that for my kids, what helped, right, is that we looked at the worst case scenario. Let's say in her case, right, if she didn't make it through the A levels, right, what happens? We actually talk it out, work it out on the chart, right? Then we know what is plan A, the most ideal, right? Then plan B, and we saw the pros and cons of each action. And by doing so, then they could visualize it. And when they can visualize it, then they also know, is that the path that they want to go to? Because it's not happened yet, right? We're all just looking at the future, forecasting in a way, right? But in a very teamwork based, not sort of scolding way, right? And once they understand that, it's also easier for them, if they're older, to see that, hey, you know what? Plan B or plan C is not really the path I really want to go. It's quite bad, actually. So maybe there's still time to do better in plan A, right? Then the motivation, the attitude change would come from within them, because they have assessed it with us and looked through worst case scenario and different options. And then they decided actually current plan is actually the better one. So just back up, right, in the remaining time. So it's important to help them visualize, help them plan the different alternatives. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I would say, just to add on, that is very powerful, especially when you have a procrastinator or somebody who's not very motivated, because what it does with them is that it helps them to own that. So if they don't own the responsibility of you know, doing what they want to achieve, to own those goals and where they want to go, you would always find that there will be a power struggle between, you know, parent and child, and what you want for your child is not what your child is able to deliver. Okay, so in my case, what I did was I told actually my son that, look, you know, this is your O levels. How well you do and where you end up is totally up to you. Mom is only here to support you. If your devices are getting in the way, I trust that you would know what to do with them. Okay, I didn't want to confiscate them, but if I do have to, then I would have to, because, you know, that is good for you. So in the end, he didn't. So I empowered him with that. He didn't even game the entire year, believe it or not. So when he was preparing for O levels, he didn't touch his computer, neither did he, you know, was he on his phone when he was at home. He insisted that he had to go out to study with his study buddy, and he did relatively well. Okay, so yeah, that's little tips for you. I think empowering your child does make a lot of difference compared to controlling your child. Having said that, Okay, I am a tiger mom. Okay, when they are younger, you need to put in strategies. You need to put in control systems for them. So, for example, my 11-year-old, okay, during exam time, her handphone's confiscated. The computer is turned off. It's locked up with a password. So during those times, she knows it's not accessible. Okay, so I think as parents, we need to do what is needed.